I thought this was a great digital image of this potted plant and I loved the colors. So let's talk about how we sketch this out. So first of all, you're going to start with a pot that's rounded and it's not a perfect circle. Notice how it's a little misshapen, and I love drawing misshapen things because then it doesn't have to be perfect. So you just want to make sure it's close to being symmetrical on both sides, and then it's just like a squatty oval, right? And then you have this opening at the top of the pot. And so this is an ellipse that doesn't go quite past the sides and the body of the pot. And then you're gonna have that lip that angles down. Make sure those angles are the same on both sides, and then you just have 3 little feet sticking out. And then I'm just going right into the plant itself. This is just a sketch so you can gesture and get the idea that there's leaves. You don't have to include all, is this 8 leaves? 1, 2, 3, 4, yes, 8 leaves. But if you decide to go right by the actual drawing, then do 8 leaves. But you could get away with 6 or even 5 leaves and get the idea. So each leaf is an organic shape that folds and bends, and so you want to make sure that you get those angles right. I use my pencil as a tool to get that correct. And what I like to gauge is my negative space in between each leaf, and that helps me get those angles correct as well. And then you want to make sure as you overlap the leaves that the edges of the leaves are in position with the next leaf, meaning, my bottom leaf to the right is very small, and the leaf right above it sticks out the farthest. And how much farther does that leaf stick out from the right side of the pot? Those are the things we're talking about. And then the top of the plant, which leaf stands up the tallest? They're not all the same height, right? We have one that's a little bit taller than the next two are about the same height. So those relationships to each other matter and help you to get those proportions right. And then I put the veins in, and I'm gonna erase just lightly with my kneaded eraser. I just kind of dab that graphite down so that I don't smudge as I'm inking it. Now when you're inking it, I like these micro pens. You can use a fine tip Sharpie will work. Sharpies tend to bleed through on my sketchbook, so it doesn't really matter. You can put another piece of paper behind. And then you can switch the tip of the pen if you have that option. And as I'm veining and doing detail work, I get a finer tipped pen to do that. I like the variety of line work, and I'm also going to go through and add some colored pencil in a minute, and you can always add your inking on top of the colored pencil after if some of it gets muted by the colors. So once I get all the detail and line work done, I'm going to let that ink dry and erase all my pencil marks fully, being careful to do it gentle so that I don't rip or crinkle my paper. I'm almost done here with my inking. Okay, and now I'm going to go through and just layer. I like to start with my lighter colors. This is a muted sky blue, a little bit of gray in there, and then I've got just a regular blue. And I'm going to go through and add those layers of shadows. I'm referring back to my original picture as I'm coloring and just trying to achieve with the colored pencils that I have as close as I can get. And you can vary with this. This pot has blues. You can use more teals or more navies. Just make sure you get your highlights and your shadows correct. I usually try and achieve 3 different values. So I've got my shadow, my tone is my middle hue, and then my highlight. And once I'm done with the blue, then I'm going to go in and just do the same thing with my leaves. Now I do have some cooler color greens and then some warm color greens. Again, if you don't have that variety of colored pencils, then you can stick with all warms or all cools, but you always want to have the darks, mediums, and lights. A sharp pencil really helps to get a small sketch like this colored in. So I prefer a hand sharpener as opposed to an automatic sharpener, just because this really eat those colored pencils away. And I use Prismacolor pencils. They're not cheap, and you don't want to waste that pencil. So, and I also think the automatic sharpeners, you don't get as sharp of the tip as you do with that handheld one. So there I go, sharpening, and then going in again and getting that fine detail. And I forgot, I did do just that layer of that soft sky blue first, and I'd like to do that on the cooler color leaves. That also ties in the blue from the pot with the other areas of the picture. A picture looks more unified when you do this. You don't have to do it on the whole picture, but it does help. Another thing that helps, you don't want to get too crazy with the color, meaning one leaf is one completely different set of greens and another leaf is a different set of greens, and you want to tie them in so you have here and there similar colors. So if you notice, I'm doing 3 or 4 leaves at a time, and then the other 4 leaves I'm going to also change and do those similar colors. That way it's not too busy, but you still have variety. Sometimes when you're coloring in, you'll get a little bit of colored dust, and instead of swiping that off with your hand, I practice just blowing it away, because I've done that too many times where I get the fat smudge and it is super frustrating. The other thing you want to avoid any kind of colored pencil is when you shade in, you want to do enough light layers that you're not getting that speckly crayon effect where the little bit of white shows through from the paper. This can be achieved with sharpening your pencil, layering paper underneath your paper so it's not just sitting on the hard surface, and then you're getting the texture from the hard surface. I'm not worried about that because I'm doing it in my sketchbook, but hopefully that makes sense. Another way is changing directions while you're shading and layering and adding colors. I preach that same theory when I'm shading with just my regular graphite pencils as well. It's so much easier to build up light layers than a fat, heavy, thick layer. Now, this doesn't show up very well. It's not a bright yellow, but I have a soft cream and then a little bit of a brighter yellow that I'm layering softly on top so that it's not an obnoxious bright. And I don't mean that rude, but I do think the original picture is quite bright yellow, and I liked this creamy, muted yellow a little bit better. Okay, then I just go back through and add any inking that you want to and sign it.